Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Honorable Ron Villanueva. Today I'm joined with a great guy, a great leader, and someone who's willing to step up to get elected to Virginia Beach City Council. We're joined today with candidate Garry Hubbard, who is running for the Rose Hall District for the Virginia Beach City Council elections coming up in November. As part of the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce Civic Engagement Platform, we've invited all the candidates to speak on particular issues that include business, COVID impact, and things that relate to the candidates' platform. We're going to be promoting these interviews on our website and via our social media platforms. But again, Garry, we're blessed to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself to everyone, and we could jump in from there?
Yes, Ron, thank you for having me. And all the people that made this broadcast possible, thank them also. As you may know, my name is Garry Hubbard. I'm a small business owner in the commercial and residential construction fields, and I'm a military veteran. I'm the only one running in this Rose Hall district that is a small business owner since 1981 and also a military veteran. And I've been in this area for quite some time. I met the love of my life and we got married in 1973. I've been here ever since, and I've raised two children. They're grown and they're both products of the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, Ocean Lakes and Green Run. And that's just a small part about me. Should anybody have any I'll give them my web address, my email address, and my cell phone at the end of the program, should anybody ask any questions or need to know anything else.
Thanks, Garry. Garry, it's been difficult times for everyone. COVID has impacted our localities, our region, and Virginia Beach particularly. Its industries are hurting, and right now, the city council and the state are doing some programs and initiatives to support COVID impact industries. What do you think is doing? What do you think the city's doing well, and where do you think they could pivot and go from there?
Well, quite frankly, Ron, I think the city's late to the ball game. You know, they're just now proposing a credit or a tax relief or a grant of $5,000, but by now we've lost so much business and many jobs in such a devastating economic times. You know, as a businessman, we have the acumen to know how to use money as a tool. And so we've got to stop this indecision that the existing city council is using, no matter if it's flooding or the environment, or actually understanding what is going on with a devastating virus and a devastating and crushing economic times. So there's more that we can be doing, from actually suspending tax to looking at different ways that we can actually support our local businesses. Because let's face facts, Ron, small business is the backbone of any economy. Without the small business owner, we have nobody employed. Just in the last week, I saw on the news we lost another 56,000 people between Disney and the airlines. We're looking at devastating times. We've got a trifecta of issues that we're going to need somebody with experience to guide us through. We're looking at a pandemic, extremely infectious, highly deadly disease that we've got to work through. The crushing economic times to be able to open our economy back up without sacrificing lives, and the racial tensions that we must sit down and actually have sane conversations about without all the animosity, to see what we can do to make things better for our city. We must put the entire citizens of Virginia Beach first. That is who makes up our city. The very definition of a city is what services are provided to its citizens. We need to look at that as far as mitigating flooding, as far as old and outdated infrastructure. You would come to somebody like myself to say, well, how can we update this infrastructure at the least amount of cost. I think this is a very good idea to go ahead and put the infrastructure out for bid for private businesses, and that will keep the money in the local economy. Plus, it will be beneficial to the city and the residents of that city.
So Garry, let's come back to that. Having been a former elected official at the local level, we know there's not an endless purse string. You know, localities are impacted the most, and we know from what we're reading and what we're hearing that the state budget's going to be cut, the localities are going to be cut. So you as a councilman, how would you balance all these priorities? Would you freeze and cut programs, or would you do new tax increases and fees? And then let's go back to your idea of investing in infrastructure. How do you fund those things?
Well, the very idea with the infrastructure, how can we not fund it? The idea is, we're one storm away from catastrophic damage to our existing infrastructure. So we need to look at this. Well, we also have to, weigh the cost of economic impact to the citizens of Virginia Beach. We've got a $65 billion vulnerable to economic damage, to catastrophic storm damage. So how do we actually go forth? We're going to have to go to state and federal to see if there's any grant money one way or the other to protect us. We've got many issues that we're going to have to look at. Yes, I would put in a hiring freeze, but first and foremost, I'd have to look at all the budgets of all the existing programs to be able to intelligently assess what needs to be done and what can be done. As far as property tax relief, as far as maybe reducing the sales tax relief, we have to look at how we can actually benefit the citizens of Virginia Beach without actually economically impacting them. We've got to understand, we've lost so many jobs that there is no more golden goose to go to try to get taxes from. You cannot tax yourself to prosperity. You cannot tax your way out of debt. That is just a pronged approach that just doesn't work. Just because money is cheap now doesn't mean you take a bond for, $100 million. That money has to be paid back no matter what the bond rates are. So we have to look very carefully at how we use money. I use money as a tool, just like a wrench or anything else. The way you utilize that tool is to the very best of your ability. So we have to look at how City Council's indecision has put us in this very situation we're in now. They have kicked the can down the road for so many years that we now have to pay more money. Money's going to cost more now to fix these items that should have been corrected many years ago. Stormwater maintenance fees, I have no idea what they're being used for now. It's definitely not on storm maintenance. My sister-in-law used to live in Windsor Woods. The storm came by, ruined her house. She had to wholesale her house at 65 years old. We lived in a room that one of her friends let her rent. Lost everything she had, all her savings, all her cars, simply because the weather and our storm drainage systems did not work like they needed to work. And Ron, that's unacceptable. You know yourself, if you're standing in 3 feet of water and the city comes to you and say, don't worry about that, we're going to have this program fixed in 3 to 5 years, I'm pretty sure the words that would come out of your mouth is not thank you for your support. So we've got to look at the situation. We've got to look at the indecision. We've got to look where our money's being spent. And we've got to truly understand and build a consensus and a coalition with each other so we can get some things done. There is no magic bullet. There is no magic program. This is going to take work. This is going to take experience to guide us through these economic and crushing and health crisis times.
Garry, you bring up some interesting things in your platform, and you just mentioned some. With all the infrastructure problems we have, particularly like with coastal flooding, and all our sewer and duct systems in the city. I mean, we're an aged city now, well over 60, 70 years, and a lot of the infrastructure needs improvement. Every year, city council puts forth a capital improvement project budget, to chip away at these things. But you see some movement, but it's not fast enough. You talked about coastal flooding. Would you support a bond or maybe a bond referendum to raise monies, to pay for these coastal flooding infrastructure projects?
Oh, absolutely, Ron. We're going to have to do it. We've got miles of canals. We've got holding ponds. All of this is silted up. The first rule of making any journey is you take the first step. So we need to actually start addressing these. Now is the time to do that. It's not going to get any better. So yes, I would support that. We've got to do this. It's not a question of if or when, but we will get hit with another catastrophic storm. How much more damage and how much more property and how much more insurance are we going to have to pay in costs just to make sure our storm drainage systems actually truly work? In the construction fields, we deal with this all the time. Curbs, streets, gutters, storm drainage systems. We understand how this truly works. There's no problem being on a committee, but you've got to be able to look in your background and draw from your reserves of your experiences on how to address a problem. And Ron, you know this yourself. If you can define the problem, you're halfway there to a solution. So we've got to really start doing this. And the indecision that we're looking at the existing city council, they're probably fine people, but they need to look at this problem down the road. Any businessman, any person, plans for the future to see what projects are viable and make an opportune time for your business. The city is just like a business. We've got to look to the future to see what we're going to do to stay viable. And our resilience in order to bring new business into the city of Virginia Beach. So the very population of the city of Virginia Beach decides to stay here and live here. Because without the citizens of Virginia Beach, there is no Virginia Beach. So we need to make sure that we make sure our resilience is there.
We are today joined with a very insightful Virginia Beach native, Garry Hubbard, who's running for the Rose Hall district for the November City Council elections. Gary's a former veteran and a small business owner in the construction realm. He's talked about supporting bond initiatives to help support our infrastructure programs. Garry, if you remember, I think it was like a decade ago during the Obama administration. The Obama administration had I forget what it was, Restore America Act, and all in the act were monies towards shovel-ready programs. Do you see Virginia Beach going that route, and maybe it'll get the workforce up and running again to help build our community? Would you support an initiative like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely, Ron. With the infrastructure, our old and outdated infrastructure, do we as a city absorb the cost and put all our men and resources and the employees that work for the city of Virginia Beach just to that task and ignore all the other possibilities that the cities and the employees have to work? As a small businessman, I see a mutual benefit to put this out for bid. The culvert systems themselves, some of them are still not connected. So we've got to look at the city plans, look at the existing site plans, look at old and outdated and small diameter culverts that no longer can handle the flow of water because we put the density of the houses and paving. There's no longer any way to absorb the water. We've cut the trees down. We've covered over the grass. So we've got to actually address this to make sure we move the water downhill like it's supposed to be moving. We've got extreme problems with our southern watershed. We've got problems in Pungo where the roads are underwater. The same thing in Sandbridge. So these are big ticket items that we're going to have to go to the state, the General Assembly. We're going to have to put some pressure on the governor and our delegates to actually work for Virginia Beach for a time and work for the citizens of Virginia Beach to try to get Virginia Beach back up and running and able to sustain ourselves. Right now, we're floundering. We're floundering in water. We're floundering in debt. We're floundering in crushing economic times. We've got a trifecta going on between the health crisis, the economy crisis, and the racial stripe crisis. So we're going to need experience, Ron, to help guide us through there. I believe I have the experience and the skill sets needed to move our city in the right direction. I'm going to have to build a consensus with the existing city council members. And if I decide to vote something yes, I'll tell you why. And if I decide to vote something no, I'll tell you why. Because without transparency, there cannot be any trust in government. The Virginia Beach Development Authority, for example, how is that actually being done? Why do we let them be so powerful that they're the ones that decide? We, the citizens of Virginia Beach, would like our city council to be the driving force in that.
Garry, you bring up some great things. I mean, having come from the unique perspective of being on local government and state government, I was the chairman of the Transportation Committee for the General Assembly and the House of Delegates. And we always heard from our municipal guys we weren't doing enough. As you know, we stepped up. We did a lot of transportation infrastructure, but that was after decades of neglect, for sure. But the response from local candidates and local elected officials, it can't always be, hey, the federal government and the state guys need to step up, because they're under the same pressures as the localities. The state governments aren't like the federal government. They can't produce money. They've got to watch their P's and Q's. They've got to balance things just as well. So it's a matter about prioritizing your priorities. So, like, you as a candidate, what would be your priorities for your budget as a councilman?
Well, first and foremost, Ron, like I was saying, we need to look at all the budgets. We need to look at all our upcoming expenses that's coming, your credits and debits. If we have to institute a hiring freeze, then so be it. If we have to cut some programs, then so be it. We've got to look at staying viable, staying in the black, so to speak, so we can fund the programs that we're going to have to fund. Flooding is one issue that we just can't seem to get away from. Everybody uses flooding. I've heard it in all the campaigns, but it seems like they just keep kicking that can down the road. Are we going to actually truly do something about flooding? We've got issues that we're facing in our city. It's not all doom and gloom. I see lights at the end of the tunnels, but these are problems as a businessman we know we have to address. You cannot just sit back and just drink coffee, have conversations, do another study, have another committee. We need to actually start getting some jobs done. We would never have anything done, streets, roads, curbs, anything, if we just sat back and looked at a plan. So let's finally decide to do something. And I don't see a better time to actually start doing something now that the Band-Aid of our economy is ripped off, our health crisis, and the racial problems that we're going to have to address, and really start addressing some of these problems as far as flooding, as far as the environment, as far as our health, as far as our economic viability as a city going forward. We have to truly define what the city of Virginia Beach truly is. The new arena, how are we going to fund that $68 million debt that we've got coming due? With the problems that we've got now, do we have any customers lined up? Any business, no matter if you open up a business, it's got to have what? It's got to have customers to make that business viable. My own business is taking a beating. We're down 95, 98%. There's nobody walking down the street with handfuls of money, so we've got to look at how to stay a viable business. So we'll look at the ones that are closed. We'll look at the ones that are viable. We'll look at the ones that we can support, and maybe cut some of this red tape so some of our businesses stay around locally that we can support. And once we finally get to a point to where we can actually reduce the virus, to where we can actually start opening up our economy, then we'll be in better shape to actually do this. So we've got a two-edged sword. a health crisis on one end and economic crisis on the other end, and how do we merge the two to the benefit of the citizens of Virginia Beach? That's going to be a way forward, Ron, that we're going to need somebody with experience to handle.
It's incredible, Garry. You are definitely real. You've got a lot of insight into different topics. Let's talk a little bit about. I'm going to mention a couple topics, and you briefly describe if you support it or what you would do with it. Rudy Loop. What would you do with that?
Well, you know, the very idea of Virginia Beach and the word beach is what we're actually trying to sell to the people. So we don't have a whole lot of spaces open anymore. I have posted on before. I support leaving Rudy Loop alone. I frequented the restaurant that used to be there, but now we should just cut the grass, pick up trash, and leave the loop alone, and maybe enhance it a little bit. But as far as any development there, no, I wouldn't support that. I would always vote no. But we have to look at economic times and, look at viabilities of different things. But yeah, no, I believe leaving Rudy Loop alone.
Virginia Beach has a lot of strategic growth areas and a lot of strategic growth strategies. Would you pursue bio, health, construction? Where would you pivot for the next growth for Virginia Beach?
Well, we've got to make and increase our resiliency, our attractiveness to other businesses. We've got a lot of empty buildings in our malls and in our streets, and that we can use for affordable housing. I've always never liked the term attainable housing. Anything's attainable if you got enough money. That doesn't make it affordable. So we really need to look at how we make it affordable, and then transportation enters into it. How do we move the people that need to work back and forth, and increase the bus structure, increase the bus times, increase the routes, and maybe 7 days a week is needed so people can get to work and quit spending and wasting time, 2 hours going, 2 hours back. Then you have to look at, is the neighborhood viable? Do they have a grocery store? Do they actually, we need to treat all the citizens of Virginia Beach equally. So we need to look at transportation. How do we make that viable for that neighborhood? If there's a food desert and there's nobody there to sell them groceries, they have to get on the bus, go to a store, and come back. How do they carry everything? So transportation is going to be an integral part of the city. So is affordable housing. So is attracting new businesses. So is new tech with their underseas cable terminating in Virginia Beach or close to it. So we need to look at how technical companies are going to come, even if it's only 50 jobs, even if it's only 10 jobs. It's still going to be viable enough to keep our citizens here in Virginia Beach. So we need to attract more higher paying jobs. The citizens of Virginia Beach are experiencing, definitely an economic hardship. They've lost their jobs, and so now they're willing to take any job, no matter what it pays, and going to try to make ends meet on substandard wages. So they have to decide if they're going to pay medicine, rent, food, health care, gas. So we have to look at how we can benefit the people and all the citizens of Virginia Beach, not just a special few, but all of them, from the schools to the roads, to the economic crisis that we're facing, to the jobs that people need. So we need to look at that, Ron. We need to look at our economic growth. The malls are sustaining a large hit. And so we need to look at that situation. That is a tough question. It's going to be a tough solution, but I believe we're up to the task to do it.
Garry, you bring up some great things. Can you tell the public why they should vote for you as the new Rose Hall District councilman?
Well, what I'd like to tell the citizens of Virginia Beach, I may not be the most well-known candidate, but I'm going to be the candidate that's going to work the hardest to represent you and your interests and your issues and try to get some of these solved, and so we no longer have to keep kicking the can down the road. I believe my years in business And I went solely in business for myself in 1981. But before that, I ran a large construction company as a professional estimator, dealing in facts, figures, overhead, profit, and how money truly works. We bid jobs in Saudi Arabia, Iran, Cuba. We did road work. I understand how roads are built. I understand curbs and streets and gutters and storm drainage systems. This is something that we've done for many years. I understand business plans. Being a small business owner, you're responsible to your employees to make sure they get paid a living wage so they can pay their mortgage, put their kids through college, put food on their table. These are things that businessmen do. We're responsible for ourselves, for our city, for our government, and for the employees that work for us. And I've done this for many years. I understand how business works. I understand how city works. I understand how infrastructure works. I understand the needs of the citizens of Virginia Beach. I believe I am best suited as an independent candidate that I will represent you, all the citizens of Virginia Beach, not just a special few, although I will represent them. And I will look to building a consensus and a coalition with the existing city council so we can finally get some things done. And I hope that if anybody has any questions, I'll leave my cell phone number and email at the end so we can actually address any of the concerns and questions that the citizens of Virginia Beach might need to know.
So how can they get in touch with the real deal, Garry Hubbard?
All right, Ron, my cell phone is 757-472-7994. My email is Garry Hubbard, and that's 2 R's in Garry, GarryHubbard, 1948 @gmail.com. I believe in transparency, and that way you can build a trust with the citizens of Virginia Beach. I promise you I won't hide. I promise you there will not be anything that I will try to keep from the citizens of Virginia Beach. You can call me anytime. I look forward to your questions. I look forward to the issues and ideas you have. I'm not saying I know everything, and I will never shade the promise. I will not say, well, I thought I've heard of that. If I do not know something, I will tell you, no, I do not know, but I also will work the hardest to try to find out that solution or that question and answer it.
Garry, I'm sorry, what?
I'm on Facebook also, Garry Hubbard on Facebook, and you can find my city council page, Garry Hubbard for Virginia Beach, or for VB City Council. I'm not that social media literate, Ron.
To our citizens in Virginia Beach, we have a great candidate here that wants to earn your vote. Get out and vote in November. Learn about the issues, learn about the candidates. We are honored to have Garry join us for the Coastal Virginia Chamber of Commerce Civic Engagement Platform. Thank you, Garry. God bless.
Thank you, Ron. And we're all the time looking for volunteers. Call me if you want to work the polls for me. And we all the time looking for volunteers and support.
Garry, you take care. Love to everyone, and many, many blessings to you. Take care, brother.
Thank you, Ron. Blessings to all. Blessings to you and your staff.